and work and the photographs that they sent. So anything you want to do to get us underway, Karen?
Nope, I think go ahead and take it.
Okay, so I'm going to try this screen share thing again. Looks like we've got there. All righty.
Oh, nice.
So we're gonna go here first and start off with a photo that Karen sent.
Ooh.
That is a stunning little shot here of a dragonfly. And I think the idea here is really just to have some fun with this. Some photos may be more satisfying to the photographer or the observer than others, but it's all just a bit of an experiment, hopefully, to have fun and to create sort of a foundation for a contemplative practice, if that's where you want to go with this. But most people said that they were interested just in sort of trying to take good pictures, and I think trying to have fun taking good pictures is the idea. And so I think, you know, it must be, I'm guessing, Karen, satisfying. You got this really extraordinary shot that's a good bit of talent, a good bit of technology, and a little bit of luck thrown in. But beautiful. Any thoughts from you on Karen of what this is and what you had in mind, what this represents for you?
It's a bug. No.
It's a bug.
So, with the things that John had said, I was trying for the controlling the background. I was trying for the rule of thirds. I was trying for the left to right. Those were the things. And so I took, I think, 3 or 4 of them to experiment with how much of the leaves I wanted in and out. And kind of went with, because I took one where the bug was much higher at the top and there were more leaves, and one where he was much lower at the bottom and there's much less. But I really preferred it with this kind of medium amount where its body and the leaves are going kind of in the same way, but with a different shape.
Nice.
That's what it did.
Karen, what did you use to take it with?
John, what is my camera?
Karen has a Panasonic Lumix FZ300. That's a little sophisticated point and shoot, and it's got really good glass in it. It's got an f2.8 lens, and she got that to go to South America because it's weatherproof. But
John recommended it for me.
I think it's a really great little camera. Now, she's actually taken this at a very high magnification. I'm thinking that it's a 600 millimeter equivalent in a sort of a 35 millimeter format process. And she's taking this at f2.8 at a high magnification. So that's going to allow her to really blur out that background almost entirely.
Which I actually did on purpose, even though I'm not a real photographer.
Way to go.
Great job.
Stood back further and zoomed in more. So that's what I did.
It's taken 125th of a second, so that's a pretty low shutter speed for something like a dragonfly. But the dragonfly is standing still at the moment, and nice focusing on that. You can see the little hairs on the legs there, and anyway, it's that camera has, well, most cameras today have pretty good image stabilization. That camera is testimony to that right here, right now. I think for me, what is striking is that it's not just controlling the background, but even though all the colors are relatively muted tones, there's really sharp contrast within that dragonfly and everything else going on. And there's also both a similarity and contrast between that dragonfly's very long straight body and the latitudinal but curvy lines of the leaf. So there's just the more I look at this, the more I sort of am able to discover stuff, just like I'm sitting looking at an image in nature. It's very rich. Anybody have thoughts on this?
I thought it was great the way she differentiated between the green tones in the background and the leaves, and even the itself has some green tones. But I mean, everything's beautifully complementary, but yet everything contrasts enough to be individually an element.
Yeah.
And I like the composition. I think if you had gone with the insect lower, I agree that you could have lost some of the impact with the leaves. It would have been a different photo and it would have been very good. But I love the way the curves of the leaves contrast with the straightness of the insect too. So I'm glad I see those leaves.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just moving the image around in the viewfinder until somehow or another it feels right. I don't know what that is, but it's more of a feeling than a decision, I think. So we have another picture here of Karen has taken some spectacular bird photos at other times, and I've just been amazed at that because I've tried to take bird photos. It's not a very quieting experience. It's very anxiety producing to take bird photos. But here, just to acknowledge what it means to try to control the background, not only with a long lens, here once again at about 600 millimeters, which would be about a 12 power binocular, but really controlling the background with the bird's head. I mean, think of all those little white spots that could have gotten involved with the bird's head or the bird feeder. And so you've got a bit of a silhouette there, nice contrast. What really stands out to me there is that the big, huge claw foot that really seems to stand out to me in all that picture. Karen, your thoughts?
I wasn't doing anything fancy.
Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, birds are hard. I spent a lot of time, I didn't send it in, but trying to do a hummingbird.
Oh my gosh, hummingbirds are hard.
And because it was right outside my window on a bird feeder, so I would open the window. So I was pretty close up, so I was getting it. But you find it's just weird because it's like you got to increase the shutter speed to get it, you know, to stop the motion. But then the ISO, that goes up high. I haven't figured out the settings to get it where everything is like right. So I guess it's just practice.
Well, you're up against some laws of physics there too. Yeah. So if you increase the shutter speed for a hummingbird, which would probably take at least 2,000th of a second, then you're going to end up having probably a high ISO, and that's going to give you some graininess.
Right.
And then even at that, you'd need to be using a wide aperture, and that's going to make focusing difficult. So yeah, that's part of the balance of it all. And
yeah. But I did get some decent ones. I mean, I got one where you could see a hummingbird, you could see it sucking up the liquid. The liquid was in midair. It was cool. But like you said, you know, there was other aspects I didn't like. But I'm going to still work on it because I love you must have birds too, Karen, because we have a lot of birds in our yard.
So this one is at my parents' house, but I like to go run at Ridley Creek and then take pictures to reward myself.
Wow, at Ridley Creek you get a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, after I got this camera, my first ones were in the Amazon. So that was my first experimenting with doing it. And then it seemed like a challenge. I take pictures of them when they're holding still.
Yeah, that's what I've done too, but I'm trying to do a little bit more with motion. It gets more difficult.
Oh yeah, that's of course the nice thing about digital photography is that you know, you can go ahead and take 200 or 300 pictures, and it makes no difference from taking one in terms of the problem of.
Yeah.
Somebody say something?
Joan, you started with the most difficult of birds.
No, I've taken other birds. I mean, in fact, I could have probably put that. I didn't put that out. I have Baltimore Orioles that they actually come to my hummingbird feeder, and they're just bright and beautiful. And I take them pretty much still.
Well, I'll tell you, if you can master the hummingbird, you can shoot anything. They dip and hover, and they're really abrupt little motions, and their metabolisms are so fast. So
We have ones that just sit on the bird feeder, though it's really cool. They just sit and drink. So
I had that fortune of having them stay still. But that's great. If you can do that, you can do anything.
yeah.
See, I cheat. I just shoot things like flowers that just more or less sit
Right,
there.
and that's what I did this time because it's a little bit easier. Oh,
Here's a photo that I'm not sure that Karen really likes, but I really like it.
Love it. Beetle.
It is. It's got an awful lot of character, and there's compositional elements to it that are interesting to me, and it has a sense of motion to it. Crawling up, it sort of made me think what the bug's experience of the corner of the wood was, to be in touch with all the little nooks and crannies to grab onto and the like, and heading up for whatever reason, those big antennae things, I don't know what they actually are, but they're really fascinating with a little bit of color on them as well. So I don't know, I know bug photography dominates the close-up photography world, and I find it very interesting, but I really like this. So thank you, Karen.
yeah, it's nice.
I like it too. It's got a lot of texture. It's got the wood texture, the texture on his antennae, the armor of his body. Like there's so many interesting textures going on.
Yep. Okay, let's look at a couple from Maryland. So Marilyn, what are your comments on this?
Well, this I thought was interesting for the life stages of the lily. You've got the one that's almost dead and then buds and one about to bloom. I thought that made an interesting composition.
Indeed. My own eye went to obviously the orange lily in the foreground there. And then my eye followed that up to discover the life cycle that was hinted at later on. So that's how my eye tracked that photo. Really appreciated the richness of it. I really like photos that don't just show everything to me all at once, that let me sort of explore what they have to offer a little bit at a time, sort of feed the meaning to me a little bit at a time. This is a good example of that. Any other thoughts from folks on this?
I also saw the motion. It carried my eye, although for me, it started on the right and went down across. But I happen to love the photography of dead or dying flowers. To me, is just as beautiful as the new flowers, because their textures, especially lilies, their textures are just lovely, and there's so many interesting shapes that they take on that I find elegant.
There is an elegance to this, I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So now we have a lily from a different angle there, and Marilyn, I really appreciate your thought to try to shoot that from an angle that's very striking. I mean, it really is.
I think I used wide angle with this.
You did.
Again, I like the fluid motion of the lily. And
you did. You're shooting with a smartphone here,
yeah, it was just a
by the
smartphone.
way. Yeah, right?
Yes.
And at a pretty wide aperture, too. I think the metadata from this shows that it's 2.4. The wilted lily was at a 1.8. So, yeah, just compositionally, I so appreciated the idea of just changing the vertical angle on it to give a whole different sense of the thing.
I kind of like the way it made the background curve, and the trees are curving up, and
Yes, it is, right?
This is one where, as you said, when you look at it later, you see things you didn't see when you're taking it, you know.
Right.
It looks like
I'm impressed you have lilies, because the deer eat all ours.
I put out deer repellent every year.
Okay.
So one of the questions that's in the background of my mind when looking at photos is, you know, this would be a good example. So you've got a photo that is really very interesting, and it sort of holds out the prospects of a similar approach to photography elsewhere. You know, maybe I'll do things from the ground level using a wide-angle lens. I'll look at the curvature of the field, play with that some, all that. Is there any part of this, Marilyn, that you did not come out the way you had hoped, that maybe you would like to think about how to correct for in the future?
Well, it certainly doesn't follow the rule of thirds, because it's right smack in the center. So.
Well, the rule of thirds is not to be a constraint. So I like the sort of wind-blown sense of motion off to the side. I think that that's an optical illusion because you're tilting the camera there, I believe. But it has this great effect of sort of this lily being blown, even though that's not reflected in the trees around it. The lily is, I think the camera is picking up on the focus of the background rather than on the lily itself. And so the lily is a little bit, has a little bit of lens blur in it, and trying to figure out how your camera on the phone focuses is something that you may get a feel for as you do more of this, so that you can choose what you want more in focus or not. But the advantage of a wide angle lens is it has an extremely great depth of field. So that's why cameras use wide angle lenses on phones, because they're simpler, the physics are simpler for it. But that's the reason sort of everything is in focus as it can be. But I think maybe playing around a little bit with how your camera focuses might be something you'd enjoy doing.
Okay.
Yes, very interesting. And so your camera, I just realized, so if it's a camera, you weren't able to actually sort of, you were guessing a little bit of what it was seeing when you were doing that. You weren't actually having your head down on the ground, were you?
No, I can't get down that low. So
right.
That's about it.
So one of the advantages,
really, when I take pictures outside, I have trouble seeing the screen on the
yes.
On my
so
cell phone.
this worked out very well, considering that more advanced cameras will have rotatable screens that allow you to put the camera down on the ground, and you'll rotate the screen upwards so that you can see it. You know, that's another advantage of some cameras. So here, this is an amazing image. Really caught my attention and grabbed me there. What are your thoughts on this, Marilyn?
Well, this is a lawn ornament that we've got, and I like the way the curved lines, they curve two directions, and I like the way they intersect. Yes. And the curvature of those lines against the very straight lines of the fence, I just thought was interesting, and the trees.
Yeah, we are drawn to patterns and the interference of patterns. I also love the fact this is another wide angle image, I guess, that you took pretty close up. So, I mean, when I looked at that, I wondered, the first thing I wondered was, how big is that thing?
Pardon?
It looks huge because you're taking it from very close up.
Taller. It's maybe 6 feet tall.
Oh, it is huge. Oh, okay.
It's supposed to blow in the wind. So.
Oh, yeah. You've got nice contrast there too. Yes, Therese?
A lot of motion. My eyes are following it everywhere, all of the spokes.
I agree.
Yes, it's nicely cropped. Did you crop this, Marilyn?
No, I don't think I did. I can't remember, but I don't believe I did.
because it's beautifully framed there, where you have 3 virtually full blades at the top, and 3 virtually full blades at the bottom, and everything is very symmetrical that way, and nothing feels cut off, even though obviously the sides are cropped. Attention is right at the center. It really does draw my eye in. The circular pattern is both, well, it's really interesting. So nice eye there, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at a couple from Rick. Rick, here we go. Any thoughts from you on this?
Well, I have just a simple point and shoot camera, very basic, but I thought this one was interesting with the pistols over on the left, going up, and then the bug was sort of an extra. And I like the color.
My eye is drawn
from
immediately.
Different angles and try to get the background to go with the flower.
Oh, very good. My own eye is drawn immediately to those pistols, which really look like a group of cobras or something ready to strike. Nice background to them. I mean, one of the things to consider is when talking about controlling the background, how many backgrounds are there in the photo? So here you have a good example of the ends of those pistils are certainly nicely contrasted against their immediate background, and then the whole flower itself is up against a larger background. And again, vibrant color. And well, again, not exactly, but just the idea. So the pistils and the bug are both sort of a diagonal that attends to the ideas of the rule of thirds. There's a diagonal nature to where your eyes are going that is going, for me, from upper left to lower right, or lower right to upper left. However, the flower itself cuts both ways. Okay, let's look at one more here. Now this is, you've really tried to capture some luminescence here, Rick, and I've loved the contrast of the background. Boy, is that a vibrant, saturated color.
Yeah. Yeah, this one again, I took several of this from different angles and trying to get the one where I thought that it was more of a solid color background with this one than with some of the other ones, and so I was pleased with how this came out.
Yeah, what time of day was this?
Oh, what time? It was early afternoon, I think. But this is kind of on the west side of our house, so this was the afternoon sun on it.
Yeah.
It's framed really beautifully. I love how you framed it because it takes up most of the space in the frame, but there's enough space on the outside to allow you to appreciate the background. But there's something very aesthetically pleasing about where you put it in that works really well for me.
And it speaks, Teresa, to the point you made earlier that a flower does not need to be pristine in order to be really interesting. In some ways, the disheveledness of this gives it so much character.
Yeah.
I have to say that after looking at this for a good long while, my mind envisioned a dragon's head. And what stood out to me were the little dark whole sort of vertical patches of dark in the upper sections of the petals there. It looked like eyes to me, and the lower right petal looking like some sort of a beak or mouth. Maybe even the pistil being something of a tongue. I don't know, but without going too much into Rorschach therapy here, eventually that sort of came to my mind and made me smile. So I like that. So here we have one from Mike, and
spotted lanternfly.
yes,
I know it. Oh my gosh, they're beautiful but so destructive.
Yeah.
so
Push it after.
Yeah, that's right. Photograph it and then kill it.
Yeah.
this may work both on a photographic level and a social context level. So it works.
I don't know. I just liked the motion was going the other way. You know, the bugs crawling toward the center of the plant.
Yeah.
I liked that. I liked the water droplets.
I mean, they are a beautiful
bug, but
beautiful bug, but boy. And I learned about the lantern. This is an earlier nymph stage, and then they have the red back, and that's a little bit later, and which is even more beautiful.
This photo has two centers of activity, if you will, two centers in it. One is obviously the bug, and the other is sort of the center of the way the leaves are coming out.
Mm-hmm.
That once again are more or less around the upper left and lower right intersections if you did a rule of thirds. So it's both a rule of thirds, but a balanced one. There's nice contrast, obviously, between the dark bug and the green leaves. The water droplets are lovely. The water droplets can sometimes be so nicely spaced out and distinct, and other times not. So those are really just sort of lovely. It gives you a lot of texture, a little bit of reflection of what's going on in the water droplets. I really, nice eye on this, Mike, certainly.
Thank you.
Mike sent this one in as well. Mike's, your thoughts on this?
Well, this is where I wish I had a nicer lens, nicer camera. This was just my smartphone, but I was taking this on an evening walk and tried to get many photos of this rabbit, and eventually I liked it because it kind of could be an illusion, because that's a sidewalk up above the grass blades, but the way it's cropped, it could be an empty sky, and you could have a really big, gigantic rabbit there on a meadow. So
Harvey.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be an example of where you're up against some laws of physics again. With a smartphone, you're really not able to zoom in without a real degradation of contrast and the like. But as long as you sort of accept that, then move forward with it. The most important thing, I think, is how cameras can help us to see. And there's a nice, I don't know, it's sort of a nice little pastoral scene. Rabbits looking at you, I think, keeping an eye on you.
Big eye.
Yes.
Well,
there's some interaction going on there. Sure. Definite interaction going on there. Now, here is one from Joanne.
Nice.
And Joanne, your thoughts? This is the seagull one, right? I don't know what you can see. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see the seagulls.
Very good.
So this was a very kind of impromptu picture. All of a sudden, somebody nearby had gotten some food and was feeding the seagulls. So they were all hovering in normal seagull fashion. And, you know, I just found it fascinating, the different, almost the different ways. As you can see, all the birds are almost looking at different directions, and they're coming right at you. And it's almost like they're in still motion, even though they're birds. And when I took the photo, I kind of kept, I know you were talking about, you know, kind of keeping somewhat of some interest at the bottom of the photo, and I believe including those homes there really makes this like a 3D picture of, it makes the birds coming flying at you, and it makes it more of a 3D, more than just having a birds with a sky in the background. So that's why I kind of included that the homes at the bottom, more of a 3D look. And then just, you know, zooming in and out, I almost, you know, there's, if you can see all the way in the bottom left-hand corner, there's one bird that's way off in the distance above the homes. And then the one up in the upper left-hand corner, you really don't see his eyes or his head. You just kind of see his little foot there. So it all just, I don't know, just the different directional and 3D, it just kind of, I thought it was an interesting photo.
It's striking.
Yeah.
This shows also the capacity of a smartphone. Joanne, I believe you're using the iPhone 5.
Yes.
5C, I guess, whatever.
Yes.
But you've got plenty of light to work with, then the smartphones can really shine well. This photo for me, when I first looked at it, was sort of jarring. Because it just presented me with so much that was visual. You've got the stuff at the bottom. You've got the bird that's flying out of frame at the top left. You've got the birds that are sort of demanding attention right in the center right. And I found that sort of very jarring and absolutely delightful. This is just an amazing photo for me. It reminds me of some album cover from the 1960s. I don't know what it is. But
hopefully not Birds from Alfred Hitchcock.
No, not that. But
Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Well, maybe so.
I could be wrong, but I'm thinking maybe Breakfast in America by Supertramp. I don't know if my memory is serving.
I don't know, but it really works. I mean, again, it's a combination of the photographer's eye and the technology and a little bit of luck for a composition that's moving like this. But if you painted this, if you imagine this as a painting, to make a decision to paint only the bottom part of the bird in the upper left-hand corner, to paint the houses really sort of way you can barely see them at the bottom, and they're really crowded down at the very bottom. It would be a little bit of an iconoclastic decision to paint it that way. And if you did, my guess is people would say, wow, that's really quite a decision you made. It has a boldness to it that the more I look at it, it just invites me to breathe fresh air. So, anybody else have comments on this? It's a very rich photo.
I think that bird that we only see the partial, the bird we're speaking about, with you only see his feet, I think it brilliantly conveys the chaos of the experience. If I didn't see that, it's beautifully balanced and composed, but that little bit of that bird gives the feeling of the experience that I wouldn't want it missing.
It amplifies the feature that you commented on, Joanne, of the birds looking in different directions. And here's another one from Joanne. Your thoughts?
So this is an interesting flower, actually. You might not realize it, but these are orange flowers that are on a stalk. So I actually had to go stand above the flower and look directly down upon it. And I was thinking about different ways that I could capture it. And at first I kind of looked from the side, because it really is like a long stalk with these orange flowers growing up.
Yep.
And then I decided, I really love looking down directly on it. And since I'm tall, I could look from the stalk down. And then what really grasped me was, you know, the flower on the right looks so much different than the flower on the left, yet it's on the same plant, on the same, you know, stalk. And I just really found, and I found it really interesting, the two different views there. And then I loved that the one on the left is more in focus than the one on the right. So I just liked the way that that all played together. And then there's like this little brown pine coney thing between the petals of the flower on the left that I was glad that it was there, because it's almost like peeking through the petals. So, and I just loved the way that that turned out.
Indeed. Now you took this with a Sony point and shoot, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that may give you the option to vary your aperture such that within the electronic viewfinder, you could play around with levels of what is in focus and not in focus,
Yeah.
and find some modulation between foreground and background, and these are red hot poker plants, are they?
I don't think that's the name.
Oh, okay. But so I have been fascinated by a plant similar to this out at Longwood, and they are difficult to shoot because you need to get a fair bit within the range of the depth of field, or make a decision what is or isn't in focus. But I've never thought to look at them from above, so this is a revelation to me.
It was fun.
Very nice. Now, with regard to what is in and out of focus here, this is we're now getting into Teresa's photos. These, by the way, are presented in the order in which they were sent to me. So there's no ordering of these. This is the way that they came to me. Teresa's photos here. Teresa, just a wonderfully ghostly, lush photo there. What are your comments to us?
Well, obviously, I staged this photo. I had taken a lot of photos outside, but I had just gotten these are called Chinese lantern flowers, I guess they are. And I had ordered them, and they had come in, and I love the texture. They're skeletonizing. And that's my favorite part, is when they start to skeletonize. I'd seen other photos of them, and I just wanted to shoot them so badly. So that's what I did. Mostly I for the texture and the colors. I love their colors. I wanted a little bit of a luminescence, but I don't know how much of that I achieved there.
Yeah, a bit, certainly.
A little bit. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Love the contrast. Nice contrast.
Teresa, is there anything that you discovered about these little pods? You were interested in them to begin with, but did the exercise of photographing them?
It's harder than it looks. It really is. I mean, I tried arranging them. I tried. Nothing looked natural. It all looked very stilted until I had to take a lot of shots before I came upon an arrangement that looked natural to the camera, because what looked pleasing to me in 3 dimensions didn't translate as much at all. So it took a little bit of effort to finally find something. And I was surprised by which arrangement looked good to the camera, because it looked very boring to me.
Our eyes and the camera's eye are ultimately separate to one degree or another.
Yeah.
Yes, nice. The orange and bluish background are nice contrast. I was sort of enchanted as to what they were, frankly. But really very, very nice and capturing that skeletonized part of things.
Thank you.
So here's, and this is a good example of how that background is not intended to be blurred out. It is intended to be a blur that gives depth to what's in front of it. So these are other examples of the thing in front of it. It actually in different stages, obviously, of the skeletonization process. And so they actually draw your attention, even though they draw my attention at least, even though they are background. So that it really is, this photo is saying, look at me first, then oh, look at me, then look at me, as I'm moving my eye further deeper into that photo. So here's a rather stark and wonderful image from Teresa.
Aside from following the rule of thirds here generally, I can't tell you why I was so drawn to this fence and that sign, but I just had to shoot it. I was on my way somewhere else to a much more beautiful location. I just stopped and I just had to take that photo, and it speaks to me in a I can't even tell you why. I should be able to. I apologize, but it just had something that I liked.
Anybody want to offer a thought on how it strikes you?
There's something about the fives being symmetrical and asymmetrical at the same time. Like they're, I don't know, it's nicely balanced that way. And I like the swirls on the wood showing up so nicely too.
And it took me a while to figure out that's a 2 in the middle, 525. So it makes you zero in on what is that.
All right, what happened to the 2?
I wondered too.
It faded.
Why did the 2 fade so much faster?
Yeah.
The amazing quality of this is that it at a glance looks so mundane, and yet the more I looked at this, the more it spoke to me of all of the human element that was behind it. So, you know, somebody lives here, and they tacked this number on there, and then the center number faded and it didn't seem to matter to them. And you know, what's up with that? And the regularity of the boards up until you get to the last board in what appears to be the gate, and then, oh no, we've got to squunch this one up in order to make the gate fit. So that's the one board is out of sequence from the other boards there, in order to sort of just make the gate fit. We need another board there, but we can't have the same distance between them. The weatheredness of the wood, what it had been through, the fact that it was pretty obviously a handmade fence, not something fancily store-bought. There's just so much about this that made me imagine the lives beyond the fence. That was really interesting to me. So, and here we have another one, Teresa. Now, Teresa's a very skilled photographer, and she has a marvelous camera, and this is just a fabulous image that is so dreamy. It is just a textbook example of the use of soft focus to show a whole rich depth that is there. This is just an amazing photograph.
Yeah.
What are people's thoughts, Teresa?
Well, these black-eyed Susans are in front of my house, and I can't leave the house to go anywhere without stopping to look at them. And I love how there's a piece of, I guess it's pollen on the main flower.
Oh.
It kind of just keeps it from being perfect. I like that. And I love a dreamy look. That's basically the way I see the world.
Oh.
That's how I beautify the world. I kind of make everything dreamy. So that's what I did.
Well, it is that.
I like that you included the one that's all curled up in the corner too.
I noticed that too. I like that. I like that.
I like how on like the eye of the Susan, it looks almost purple in that light. Kind of how it's like bringing out how dark it is in the center, and I don't know, I just really like it. It's almost like moonlight on it.
Yeah, I didn't notice that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the purple hues are obvious not only there, but in the other two flowers to the left that are lens blurred. That purplish hue is clear on my screen, at least.
Yeah.
There's a swirling sort of quality to this too. My eyes sort of go around in a circle from sort of right to left and clockwise in this, and I'm not sure exactly why, but it's got a spirally swirl to it.
And I like that it's not centered. I think I tend to center more than I should, and I like that. It looks like a mass of flowers there too.
Indeed. Well, that's just dreamily fantastic, Teresa. Thank you for sharing that. Now here we have some from Joan.
And after you said that you center them, it's not.
No, it's not.
That one isn't, no.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So many people that take flower photographs highly prize flowers with sort of muted tones. And this is a beautiful example of how that is both vivid and muted at the same time. Nice color and contrast.
Well, I was trying. I hadn't ever really, I don't think I had really used like the metering aspect that you were talking about. And so I wanted to try, I forget what this was. This was center weighted metering, but I had always just used the metering that it used. And so that's why I was able to get that dark background, because, and I never so that was a learning experience for that.
Yep. You've got the little pistol sort of peeking out from them. There's a little mystery there, I think, but it's just such a lovely soft color.
Joan, what kind of camera did you use for that?
This is an Olympus Mark II 10. It's a mirrorless camera. And to be honest with you, I'm still learning. This is really difficult for me because I only got this camera maybe like a year and a half ago to go on vacation. And not having digital, I had to learn the whole digital format. And so thank God for YouTubes because nobody tells you how to use the camera, and at the phase I'm at right now is once I learned to take photos, what do I do with the photos? Like I had emailed John, I need to get a new computer and I need to learn programs, all of that stuff that I don't know yet, so it's a big learning experience at my stage of life, but I guess it keeps your mind going, so.
Oh, it's great. Well, I asked because I noticed in the background on the right-hand side, there are little balls of light that you see there. Do you see those little fairy?
Oh, yeah.
That's called bokeh. And that's what photographers try to get in the background to kind of beautify the background. So you got bokeh. You did a great job.
Well, that was a long lens too, because I had to be under, this is a rose of Sharon, so it was kind of a tall bush, and I had to be under it.
You were shooting at a 300 millimeter equivalent there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
It's so the camera that Joan has is a little Olympus camera. I'm partial to Olympus cameras myself. They may be about to hit the rocks with the economic problem of the pandemic, but I loved Olympus cameras. And this is their EM10 camera, which was recently sort of broadly recognized as one of the best cameras to get for folks interested in breaking into interchangeable in camera photography, and you're using a 40 to 150 zoom lens, the f4 to 5.6. That is not a particularly fast lens, but it's a pretty darn good lens in every capacity. Other than that, it's got good color, and it may be the single best lens bargain anywhere on the market. You can get that amazing lens for very cheap, and it's a fabulous setup. You've also got the smaller kit zoom lens that you were using, I think, for the other next photograph. But it's a nice setup, and it gives you, there's plenty of ways that you could have just loads of fun. So enjoy that camera. You will have endless amounts of new things to try with it.
Yeah.
So.
And I read today B&H sent out, I think the company that bought Olympus is going to continue to pursue the cameras, so we'll see.
Joan mentioned YouTube. There are a lot of people on YouTube that offer photography pointers and the like, and some of it is quite good. There's a vlogger out of Malaysia named Robin Wong, W-O-N-G.
I've seen him.
And he shoots Olympus cameras and is really very entertaining and very good. And his thing is street photography. But so I really enjoy listening to Robin Wong's vlogs every week.
Yeah, so I listened to him too, but you know where I learned how to use the camera was this guy called Rob Trek.
Yep.
T-R-E-K. Because he just videos the camera showing you what to do. It's great, you know. Right. So anyhow.
Yeah.
Here's
so
one of my centered photos.
But it's quite striking, though.
Well, again, lovely saturation of color there for this. It has a real intimate feel, and frankly, there's a little bit of wit there, intended or not. But so this is bee balm,
right.
And my eye is drawn to this bee balm, and then suddenly I notice, oh, there's a bee. My eye is not drawn initially to the bee.
Yeah.
So the bee is this added little 1-2 punch of this photograph for me.
Yeah, I like the bee. And that was taken at 1/800th of a second, which is really not that fast, but he was kind of still a little bit. So he might, and this is like a whole bunch of bee bombs. So I did like, it shows all the bee bombs. It's like a little field in my backyard. And it's afternoon sun also on the bee balm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got a catch light in the bee's eye. All the wildlife photographers that I follow always talk about, you want to get a catch light in the eye. You want the eye alive.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So, and I try that too, underexposing a little bit to get a little bit more of the saturation and so it's experimenting. That's what I'm still in the midst of doing, so.
That is fabulous. That is absolutely, yes, the saturation there really does have a very sort of close in, very intimate feel to it. I really, very striking. Other thoughts from folks on Joan's photos?
One for me kind of tricks my eye into thinking there's water below the flower, and it almost looks like there's a reflection in water and there isn't.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
There's something about the fact that you have this leaf in focus at the lower left-hand corner that adds to the depth of the image to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very apparent, but I think it's actually fairly significant to the overall perception of the photograph. So now we're coming on Miss Hannah's photos, and thank you so much for these. Clearly, Hannah playing around with the idea of shadows and light and texture, and you're also shooting from a unusual angle there. There's a lot going on. What are your thoughts, Hannah?
So, I was looking around the backyard and I saw this leaf and I wanted to try and do some stuff with luminescence, and then there was this shadow on it that I really liked.
Yeah, I like that too.
And it almost looks like there's like 3 different colors of the leaf.
Yes.
Mhm.
I love the little edge of the shadow on the leaf itself. That's such a clear projection of the way that the leaf does not have a smooth edge, but has this little textured edge, and that's both in complement and in contrast to the obvious way in which that is at the portion of the leaf in the far left-hand side. I really...
In the upper left-hand shadow on the leaf, you see the shadow of a tiny other leaf. And I like how that suggests of the reality outside of the frame. It adds a whole different dimension to what I'm looking at. And the way that the leaf takes up most of the frame diagonally in the shot, that's got a nice balance to it. There's a lot going on here.
There is. Very nice, Hannah. Let's look at another one. I think you're playing around very intentionally with composition here, looks like.
So it's actually the same leaf from a different angle.
Oh my.
And I was working on luminescence. It was hard to get because at that time the wind was blowing, so I was trying like to chase this leaf around with my camera. But I was also trying to get a like really dark background because there's actually trees in the background.
Oh.
Which were actually like brighter than they look in the photograph. But since the leaf is so bright, the camera kind of made them black.
Mm-hmm.
Is the blue the sky, or what's the blue from?
I think that blue is the sky, in between the leaves of the trees, but I'm not sure.
I think it probably...
Photography helps us, I think, to expand our sense of vision, and you have a wonderful eye to begin with, Hannah, and so I just hope you continue to take photographs and enjoy that. This next one that you have here is a lovely one. I know that you have enjoyed taking grass from our first workshop a year ago,
and well before that.
And well before that, if you are a champion that every blade of grass deserves celebration, and here you've got luminosity, you've got a sense of how blades of grass can stand out even among thousands of other blades of grass. You've got this really interesting composition where the eye is caught both with the diagonal and with the vertical that's roughly around the rule of thirds type of division. You've got a lot of variety of different greens going on there. It really is a buzz of very quiet activity.
And I had played around with this one, and I had one very similar without the lighter grass at the top, but I thought the lighter grass just really added something, so I went with this one instead.
It does. It balances the very top with the very bottom, having some brightness to it.
I think it's amazing that in a whole frame full of blades of grass, we know exactly which ones Hannah wanted as her subject. That takes a very sophisticated kind of eye. I hope you keep shooting too, Hannah. You're really good at this.
Thanks.
It's just so vivid. I love it.
That's great.
So now some from Carol. And what to make of this?
That's a little twig on my burning bush, which will
Okay.
be bright red in the fall. But I like the little bud at the top. This plant keeps growing. This thing explodes every year for goodness knows how many inches, and it's still growing when I would expect it to stop in the spring. But I thought it was interesting too to see the colors up the stem and in the little bud at the top, and then to catch, you know, a little in the vein of the leaves, and that's about it. I wanted to get rid of that blue sky, but I couldn't move it
Well,
anywhere.
I'm glad you didn't, though. I like the contrast of that. That blue is so vivid and rich.
Oh, I like
It
the blue.
is.
Yeah,
I like it too.
I like the blue.
Yeah.
Plus there's little bits of blue on the right upper side, you know, little bits of blue right there.
Yeah.
What is interesting about this photograph is that there is so much that is vivid about it, and yet the thing that for me it celebrates is the marvel of this sort of brownish part of the plant.
Yes,
The texture that's
looking at that, like, what is
the texture that's there. I mean, that's the character is in both a tone and in size, not the major part of this photograph, and it's really interesting. It draws me into the photograph away from all of the sort of the dominant elements. It had an interesting effect on me that way. And I like the blue sky as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess it does. I was trying to switch it around and move it so I could get rid of the blue sky, but no matter what I did, if I got rid of the blue sky, I got the roof pieces over the deck.
Yeah.
Well, I think the blue sky adds a little bit of relief for the eye. There's a lot going on, so it gives us a little bit of a simplicity that you need in the middle of a composition where there's a lot going on.
As a beginner photographer, that's very interesting because I don't tend to see those things. I didn't as I was doing my photographs, but I guess that I guess it's there. Thank you.
And again, not centering that, putting it off a bit to the side, you've got a sense of the sweep of the leaves, but my eye follows the leaves from left to right to that stalk that is so interesting. So
that's very strange. You talk about the eye following the left to the right, and I've tried that. I tried moving things around to do that. My eye invariably wants to go from right to left.
Okay, well,
I'm sure there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just strange.
That could be your signature.
One never knows.
Yeah.
And one more here from Carol. I think this is a fabulous one to bring us to a close here this evening because it just holds so much. Carol, your thoughts?
Looking for something to photograph that wouldn't take me out into the lawn.
Well, okay.
This is a weed. This is growing in one of the planter boxes I have that I haven't planted in a couple of years on my deck. But as I was looking around, this luminescence on the top just caught my eye. And I thought, that looks really neat.
Yeah.
So
wow.
I tried to get a picture of it, and then I was finding myself being too much on top of it, so I tried to get from the side a little bit. And as I was doing the picture with all the fancy stuff on my camera that I had no idea existed, I thought this could be a fun thing for a series of pictures in the different textures, from black and white to the full colors, whatever you call it, and then little in between, just, you know, little pictures that you'd hang on the wall, but in a series.
Yes.
So how did she get the total black background? Is that taking right into the sun?
No, it's adjusted with the stuff on the camera.
Oh,
because the background is the deck fencing and a step on the deck and the planter, all kinds of extraneous stuff.
Okay. You're using an iPhone XR, it's like it says.
Is that what it says? I know it's an iPhone. It's an 8S or something like that. I don't know.
It's
so
one of the
the
later
phone
ones.
itself gets rid of the background, I guess.
It did. It took me a while to find it, but I just kind of went through with the photographs once I discovered that magic word edit and started punching buttons. I had a blast. So much fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well, that is the most important thing, I think, is to have a blast at doing this. And in whatever way we want to use a camera to do that, it should be, you know, we should feel the liberty to do that. Increasingly, cameras are involved in what would be called computational photography. So phone cameras need to do a lot of computer processing because it's working with a tiny little lens. And it will offer us a chance to do other things with the photograph. At the other end of the spectrum would be an old-fashioned film camera where light, you know, sort of came through a piece of glass and focused on a piece of film that affected little silver halide crystals and moved them around in particular configurations and give us the picture. So I think it's all up for grabs as to whatever is fun and fascinating. The luminescence of this is just amazing to me. And if ever there was a celebration of something otherwise considered a weed, just like Hannah's blade of grass, there's no weed that can't be celebrated in such a fashion. So I think that's just amazing. Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you.
So there we are to the end of our photos that were shared. And I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to play around with some of the techniques that I had suggested. And I just think it's absolutely amazing. Some of those photographs are, you know, just ones that I imagine you're very pleased with. They all indicate that you've got an eye that's trying to look beyond your normal way of seeing. And so any final thoughts as we come to a close for this session and for this workshop?
Well, thank you, John, for all that you brought to it and for your time and wading through our pictures.
Yeah, I like that. You're very encouraging and positive, and you give good commentary and critique. So people feel like, oh, I can do more, I can learn more, rather than being discouraged.
Exactly. Your insights were wonderful.
Yes.
They're you can tell that they have a lot of experience behind them, and I agree with everybody. Your approach is so encouraging, and I feel like that's so important to photographers of all levels.
Well,
So,
when you're sharing these photos, what is precious to me is that you're not just sharing a photo, you're sharing something of your vision of something. And that is a very personal offering. And in every one of these pictures, you've let me a little bit into what's behind your eyes as you're looking out. And that's just fabulous. So that's a grace and a gift. And I get very excited about photographs, I seem to be able to sort of feel a difference between a photograph that is taken for some sort of technical exercise, or for advertising or something that's accomplishing some purpose, and a photograph that's giving an insight into the way that someone is trying to look at the world. And all of these are just so honest and curious that there's a sense of discovery going on in these photographs. They really are beautiful, each in their own way, and I just thank you all for sharing them. So if anybody ever wants to share any photographs with me, I love to see other people's photographs, and thank you for being open to my work as well.
John, can I ask you, with your photographs, do you frame a lot of your photographs? Do you keep albums with your photographs? What do you do with your photographs?
So I have a number framed around the house. I have framed them to put in exhibits, and then when I take them out of the exhibit, I'll hang them around the house. Not sure I've done more than one or two otherwise that didn't have an exhibit type purpose to begin with. Personally, one of the things that I discovered about digital photography was how much I loved the way photos looked on a computer screen.
Yes.
That vibrancy, that luminescence that comes through on a computer screen, it's really very hard to duplicate in a print. Now, the prints that I have made tend to be made on a high gloss, what is called metallic paper, but it's not actually metal. It's a sort of a term that's used as a descriptor. But it brings out very sharp contrast that complements the way that my photos tend to have a lot of sharp contrast. So I enjoy them, but I really love looking at photos on a computer screen, that backlit on a good computer screen. They really jump out at me, and I really like it.
Well, I really enjoyed watching everybody's photos tonight.
So.
Yeah, they were great photos, everybody. It was so much fun.
Thank you all, and thank you, Karen. Any last words from you, Karen, to wrap us up?
I don't really have anything other than thanks to John for doing it. Thanks for everyone for coming. I'm delighted that we could have Joan and Teresa joining us. Come back for other things. It's nice to get to know you both. And then have a lovely night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.